Job interviews are stressful no matter what, but what do you do if you're asked a weird question? Step 1, control your face. Then think fast, especially if you're asked very weird, very real questions like these. What are 10 things you can do with a pencil other than write? Okay, this is what I do in a job interview. You can use it as a skewer, erase if it's got an eraser, a back scratcher, pencil pop, play darts with it. Is anyone counting? I've got 5, okay. No matter how creative you are, that's a lot of things to think of. And what does this have to do with anything? Casey Grammer, a customer success manager for Air CFO, told Medium she actually likes to ask this question, saying, "It's a nice break from traditional accounting questions and also shows how well candidates can think on their feet." While she did get a few rather pedestrian answers, like, writing and erasing, some applicants genuinely took her by surprise. Violent surprise. The most memorable non-stab someone response came from someone who admitted that they used a pencil to pick earwax out of their headphones. Grammer loved this and went on to hire the person, saying, "Come on, most of us have done it." Have we, though? How much does a quarter pounder weigh? A quarter pounder itself has bread and lettuce and tomato and mayonnaise, so maybe half a pound? But if you don't hire me for McDonald's, I'm okay. That's it. As a world-renowned fast food brand, one assumes that McDonald's takes its menu items seriously, but their job interviews, not that much apparently. From cashier candidates being asked if they could snarf up to 20 McNuggets in under 5 minutes, to potential servers being quizzed on whether the humble tomato is a vegetable or a fruit, one can almost imagine Ronald McDonald himself conducting these interviews. But when it comes to wannabe burger flippers, the interview question that takes the cake, or all beef patty, pretty much answers itself. Obviously, it's 1/4 of a pound, at least when it's raw. But it's easy to see how someone could get it in their head trying to figure out if they're being tricked or just having their intelligence insulted. Then again, not everyone's a mathematician. Back in the 1980s, A&W briefly offered a third pounder, which was obviously 1/3 of a pound. But the dish was apparently a loser for the company because too many customers thought it was actually lighter than a quarter pounder. So maybe this is a harder question than we dare to believe. Why is a tennis ball fuzzy? I assume it has something to do with the way it grips the tennis court. Something to do with the way it travels through the air that makes it. This is something we never think about, much less question. But if you've ever applied to be a client manager for Xerox, you may have had to ponder the meaning of this fuzz on the spot, perhaps while simultaneously wondering, what could this possibly have to do with the job? There is, of course, a real answer. A textured surface affects the ball's bounce, control, and trajectory. I think I got that. Am I hired by Wilson now? I mean, most likely it's meant to test how observant the candidate is when it comes to mundane details, which is important if your job is to manage relationships between the company and their clients. Then again, we're just guessing, and so probably are most of the candidates confronted with this question. You're a new addition to the crayon box. What color are you and why? Jeez, how big a box are you? I mean, how many colors am I competing with?
Let's say 64.
64. A taupe azure. Azure. I don't even know if that's a word. It's between sky blue and periwinkle. Blue's my favorite color, and I wanted a different shade. Crayon names can be kind of cool, especially when you're a kid. It's exciting when you get a brand new extra large box of crayons and pull out a new elegant color like cerulean or periwinkle. So I got the right answer, I think, then, right? Okay. It's like you haven't even used it yet and already you're learning stuff. Maybe Urban Outfitters wanted to recapture that imaginative feeling when it included this question in their list of things to ask potential sales associates. Given the array of products the brand offers, it's not completely out of left field to ask people to get deep about colors. Beyond offering clues about the candidate's personality and mindset based on their color preference, the way the question is constructed and the way the candidate would need to answer it also sheds light on their understanding of what new is. Unfamiliar, never seen before, original, all things that are crucial for a lifestyle brand that wants to stay on trend. Can you say Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers and sell a washing machine at the same time? No. If I'm giving people rhymes while they're trying to buy a washing machine, they're gonna walk away. Like, what? Ask anyone who has ever worked a customer service job, especially call center agents, and they'll likely tell you it can sometimes feel like a juggling act. It's even more complicated when the job involves walking customers through troubleshooting steps in real time.
In the File menu, do you see where it says Open? Okie dokie. Can you open the Open menu?
And it's even worse when the customer in question is angry and impatient. This is probably why MasterCard asked call center applicants this silly question that, at first, seems like it has nothing to do with the job, or any job. With that said, if you're the kind of person who can handle a classic tongue twister, albeit a slightly wonky version of it, while convincing a couple who's approached you to buy the newest washing machine model, it could mean you're perfect for the job. Someone who can speak quickly and legibly, keeping your composure when discussing difficult or even unconnected topics. In other words, a born salesperson. How would you find the English words that became obsolete between the 16th and 17th century? ChatGPT. Uber reportedly asked this question in job interviews for its software developers, who were pretty much guaranteed to never need words like doxy, crapulous, or feared in the course of their employment. This question is most likely meant to gauge an applicant's approach to simplifying what might initially seem like a very complicated problem. According to Glassdoor users, the interviewer specified that the candidate could use a search engine for this, which kind of feels like answering their own question. But it's possible that this is a test of how the potential hire would code such a function, which is highly relevant to the job. And in case you're wondering, or need some exotic new insults, there are a number of online sources you can hit up for the answer, including the advanced search function of the Oxford English Dictionary website. And if you're a true word nerd, there's a site with a dictionary of unusual words called the Frontistery. You're welcome. How many snow shovels were sold in the US last year? All right, so let's map this one out. So there's like 360 million people in the United States. People being in apartments that don't need them. There are people in retirement villages that don't need them. Then there are the ones that have been made, that are stuck in warehouses somewhere, sitting on shelves. Let's say 90 million. Believe it or not, you don't need proprietary sales data from multiple big box stores and suppliers to know this. There's an actual mathematical approach to figuring it out. It would involve taking certain details into consideration, such as the number of people living in states that would need at least one snow shovel per home, the number of households in said states, and even the average lifespan of a snow shovel. This question was asked by Axon, which was formerly known as Taser International. It was included in interviews for a leadership development program, and the fact that the company develops tech for public safety and security actually makes this question relevant. A person would have to at least have a passing knowledge of some of the details we listed in order to stand a chance of offering a logical, if not necessarily correct, answer, making them a good job prospect. Similarly, Meta, formerly Facebook, supposedly asked its risk analysis candidates to guess the number of vacuum cleaners in America. Yes, in America. The company didn't specify if they meant sold items or the total number of vacuums out there, including those half-working ones we keep in the garage because we might figure out how to fix them one day. How many square feet of pizza is eaten in the US each year? Dude, that's gonna be near impossible. Again, 360 some odd million people. What do people eat? Once a week, maybe? College kids eat it twice a week, maybe? I don't know. 2 billion square feet of pizza. When you hear the name Goldman Sachs, your first thoughts are most likely finance, wealth, or investment banking, not pizza. Yet this dough-centric dilemma is reportedly one of the questions asked when the company interviews potential programmer analysts. Given that the job of a programmer analyst involves troubleshooting and customizing computer programs based on the needs of the company's customers, this question is likely intended to measure two things: the interviewee's familiarity with the US customer base, and their ability to draw conclusions based on numbers and statistics.
You know what? Let me gauge the room. Guys, we're gonna want another pizza. Who's hungry? Show of hands. Let me see them.
Can you ask ChatGPT? Did you ask?
1.589 billion. There you go.
What did I say? 2 billion?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm hired. That's legit. Then again, this is the company that asked potential software engineering interns how to identify the heaviest among 8 imaginary balls in the fewest number of steps, and quizzes summer analysts on their estimates for the number of grocery stores across America. So maybe Goldman Sachs interviewers just really like guesstimations. Are you a lucky person? Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was born in a wealthy country. I got to go to good schools. My parents stayed together, which is helpful. Good job opportunities. Got to go to college. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. In February 2020, Dan Rose, Amazon's former business development director, tweeted an interesting bit of trivia about company founder Jeff Bezos, writing, "When I worked at Amazon 1999 to 2006, Jeff Bezos' favorite interview question was, 'Are you a lucky person?' If you're not sure, that's the wrong answer. Bezos' fondness for this question seems to have something to do with how much he claims to value intellectual humility. According to what Basecamp founder Jason Fried told Inc., Bezos has observed that the smartest people are open to new points of view, new information, new ideas, contradictions, and challenges to their own way of thinking. According to Rose, a wrong answer would downplay luck and credit the applicant's self-perceived strengths, which is reportedly a big red flag for Bezos.
Tell us what your greatest strength is.
My greatest strength, I guess, would be strength.
Strength. Physical strength.
How would you describe the color green to a blind and deaf person? I'd have to figure out how to communicate with that person first before I could describe, but I think what you're trying to go for is like, how would I describe, I don't know, that's a really hard one because blind and deaf, like I'd be at a loss. You wouldn't hire me, I'd be done. Before becoming an SEO manager for a different company, Cassidy Barney applied to be an associate at GNC, specifically to work the register at one of the brand's small town stores. Speaking with Medium, she shared that during the job interview, she was asked that weird question by the branch manager. She admitted to the interviewer that she had no clue how to reply. Turns out, she wasn't alone. When the interviewer tried to move on, she pressed the issue, asking, "What's the answer you were looking for? How would you answer that?" To Barney's surprise, the interviewer didn't know either, making it seem like the question is less about having a compelling answer and more about knowing your limits, giving it a shot, or some other obtuse nonsense that has nothing to do with actual work. Here's a good one. Have you ever stolen a pen from work? Ooh. Does intention matter in this question? Because I feel like I've definitely walked away with a pen. But no, I don't think I've intentionally been like, ooh, I like that. Like, who does that? But I have stolen lots of pencils because, as we know, there's lots of uses for pencils. So, what would you do if you were asked about some light klepto behavior in the workplace? Is that even legal? You're allowed to plead the fifth, right? After all, who hasn't accidentally pocketed a pen at some point?
If it's so important to you, here, have my pen.
That's my pen.
Well, whatever, people. They are just things.
Jiffy Software reportedly asked potential software architect hires this potentially incriminating but arguably inconsequential question. Maybe the interviewer wanted to test the honesty of the applicant, or perhaps they wanted to gauge how the candidate would respond to an uncomfortable question under time pressure. In a Glassdoor post, the interview candidate who was asked the question added, "It was scary, the amount of information they knew about me. I was concerned at how they knew who my parents were and every place I'd ever lived." Which, yeah, scary, but also, what does that applicant have to hide? How many cows are in Canada? I mean, first of all, do they call them cows in Canada? I assume it's the same. I'm gonna guess 8 million cows in Canada.
11.91. I mean, that's not bad.
That's close. That's close. Depending on who you ask and when you ask them, Google can have the reputation of a fun workplace. So it's no surprise to hear that the company has been known to include an oddball question or two in their job interviews. For example, if you're applying to be a local data quality evaluator, you may be asked about the bovine population of the land of the maple leaf. The interviewer may have thrown that in to assess mathematical aptitude and data analysis skills.
Holy cow.
Google is far from the only employer that asks such questions. If you apply for the associate consultant position of Bain & Company, for instance, the interviewer may have asked you to estimate the number of windows in New York. Meanwhile, Constant Therapy's senior marketing director shared that the Boston-based environmental nonprofit organization Earthwatch asked him about the number of gas stations in the United States when he was applying to be marketing director. He explained to Medium, "They wanted to see how I thought through a problem logically." Here's a vaguely threatening one. "If you put your cell phone on silent and then it rang really loudly, what would you tell me?" I guess that comes to what, admitting a mistake? Yeah, I could admit, I jacked that one up. I thought it was on silent. I apologize. This is the job I really want, so let me step out and talk to them first to see if I still need to continue this interview. If a device comes with a built-in function, you expect it to behave when you ask it to. So when consumer goods company Kimberly-Clark asked potential biomedical engineer hires this question, they're assuming that your cell phone went rogue. Perhaps that's the point, and maybe what the interviewer really wanted to know was how the candidate would address a problem that was absolutely not supposed to happen under the given circumstances. There are, of course, many possible reasons why this would happen, including device malfunction or human error. But it's in crafting the explanation, or excuse, that the candidate can demonstrate how quickly they think on their feet. If you could throw a parade through the Zappos office, what type of parade would it be? Smaller balloons dressed in our Zappos clothes. How about that? You're celebrating something, so what's going to draw everybody together? Though the idea of throwing a parade is probably not something that ever crosses anybody's mind. Zappos is a US-based online apparel retailer, so it makes sense that at least a few of its job interview questions would require a bit of creative thinking. But this one, which Zappos family interviewers supposedly asked applicants for the customer loyalty team, is disarming. And Glassdoor users' answers to the questions were all over the map, ranging from a costume parade to clowns dressed up as dinosaurs riding unicycles while juggling live sharks, which are also dressed as dinosaurs. Which has us wondering, do live sharks like to be juggled? And what if they don't? Who cleans up the aftermath of that? But we digress. As one Glassdoor user put it, this is not an unusual question if you're at all familiar with the Zappos.com culture. If you say so, pal. How many quarters would you need to reach the height of the Empire State Building? So it's got to be over 100 stories, right? So let's say we're just stacking them like you would to put in like a roll of quarters. Dude, this is near impossible. Maybe you get 12 quarters per inch. So it's 144 per foot. 210,000 quarters if you stack them. It's admittedly challenging to imagine anyone, no matter how bored, would find any reason to find an answer to this question. But JetBlue Airways Corporation apparently thinks pricing and revenue management analysts should be able to pull it off. And it sorta makes sense since it involves both altitude and money. One way to answer this question correctly, provided you have all the necessary data at hand, would be just to crunch the numbers. From its base to the tip of its antenna, the Empire State Building stands at 1,454 feet. Meanwhile, a US quarter is 0.069 inches thick. Plugging in the numbers yields the answer. You'd need almost 252,870 quarters stacked on top of each other.
Welcome to the team.
Woohoo! So, if you're applying to JetBlue anytime soon and you really want to freak out your interviewer, commit that number to memory and drop it in the moment you're asked. What do you think about when you're alone in your car? Today, I'm clearly going to think about what interview questions I didn't do correctly. Private time is private time, right? For folks with a car, those solitary stuck in traffic moments are inconvenient, but they're also a valuable opportunity for introspection. In 2024, Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center surveyed 1,000 people in the US, and more than half replied that having sufficient alone time is key to their mental health.
Well, I want to be alone.
Maybe that's why Gallup, a management consulting company with a focus on leadership empowerment, asks potential associate analysts where their minds go during those moments. There are plenty of things an interviewer can learn about a candidate based on the way they answer this question. For instance, someone who's quick to anger might find themselves complaining about the terrible driver in front of them, while a creative person might daydream about their next art project or write a song in their head. A penguin wearing a sombrero walks through that door right now. What does he say, and why is he here? What's up, guys? Where's the parade? I don't know. More often than not, oddball job interview questions have some sort of underlying logic. Maybe the interviewer wants to ferret out an applicant's hidden traits or test the limits of their patience.
Impress me.
Now?
Impress me.
If you've ever applied to be an office engineer at Clark Construction Group, you probably didn't have time to ponder the why when you got asked this absurd question. Still, the sheer ridiculousness of this career was enough for at least one other employer to include it in their repertoire. According to Marty Maltby, the director of Peace House Community, this became his favorite question to ask after reading it in a list of questions employers could ask potential employees to test their creativity and their ability to adjust quickly to unexpected circumstances. The responses he received ranged from straight up laughter to, I don't know, I don't speak penguin. What's your gun noise? Are we talking like, is it a handgun? Tommy gun? And then machine gun will be different? You trying to see how violent I am? Because all of a sudden, I was just questioning whether I should even answer that. Sometimes interviewers like to ask weird questions to make sure they don't hire qualified candidates who are terrible fits for their company culture. Take the case of the London School of Makeup, for example. HR consultant Steve Pritchard told Medium that in order to find hires that have a personality and a good sense of humor, they came up with the idea of asking applicants what they would sound like if they were a gun. Pritchard explained, "We felt that it would be a good way to test their ability to relax and have a laugh in a pressure situation, as well as to see how witty they are." He was expecting to hear shotgun or even machine gun imitations, or maybe even a good laugh, but those expectations fizzled the very first time he asked it. The candidate was silent for a long time and then simply said,
Bang.
Then never asked the question again. What is the color of money? It's a movie with Tom Cruise and Paul Newman. On the surface, this question, which the American Heart Association reportedly asked candidates applying for the job of project manager, seems obvious, and some interviewees might automatically answer green. But therein lies the brilliance of this question, because there's no single answer to it. Remember that depending on where you are in the world and the denomination and currency of the money in question, the answer differs. Coins in the US, for instance, are typically silver or bronze, while paper bills are predominantly green. Meanwhile, in countries like the Philippines, bills come in blue, yellow, green, purple, red, and orange, not to mention the coins, which are gold, silver, or a combination of the two. In other words, this question is more than a simple test of color perception. It's a way to gauge whether or not a candidate considers all the potential factors in a given situation before coming to a conclusion, which is a crucial quality for a project manager. How would you explain what Adobe is to your grandma? It's a money pit. Out of all the questions we've seen so far, this one for a deal desk analyst might make the most sense. Generally, a deal desk analyst serves as the connective tissue between the different departments in a company, including finance, legal, marketing, or sales, that are crucial to closing deals. In that role, they're expected to talk to different kinds of people, each with their own sets of technical jargon and varying levels of understanding about a company's particular products or services. So when you think about it, this is the perfect question to ask a prospective employee.
I don't know about that.
A variation of the common explain X like I'm 5 question, explain X to an elderly person basically asks you to demonstrate how you would use simple and clear language to make a technical or unfamiliar concept easier to understand. So if you can explain what the company is to someone outside the target demographic of its products, it's a sound assumption that the task of getting everyone in the company on the same page is something you can handle. Who would win in a fight between Spider-Man and Batman? Spider-Man has webbing, which has a certain distance it can't get to. But Batman has deadly freaking weapons, man. I think that's hands down. I don't see how Spider-Man wins. The answer's obvious, but if you're really curious, subscribe and hit the bell on our friends over at Looper for endless entertainment on your favorite pop culture stories. If you're curious who gets asked this question, finish this video first. Comic book fans love to ponder the outcome of what would happen if their favorite characters, regardless of which universe they're from, would fare in a no-holds-barred fight against each other. But this is the caliber of discussion you would expect in the comments section of a pop culture website, not a job interview in the hallowed halls of Stanford University. Still, this way out of left field question was reportedly part of the job interview to be a Stanford medical simulationist. But what's the answer? Marvel's Amazing Arachnid or DC's Dark Knight? Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the most realistic answer to this question is whoever the comic book writer wants to win. But looking at it from that angle, it becomes clear that the question ties into the simulation aspect of the job quite nicely, which requires harnessing the power of simulation to create realistic and controlled environments for training and educational purposes. If you were a pizza delivery man, how would you benefit from scissors? So you've got your, the warming case that zips up. I imagine, having dealt with zippers, that sometimes it jams. If you get into a car accident as a pizza delivery guy, you can cut your seatbelt to get out. Again, this is a pizza-related question for a company that doesn't make pizza. It might have made the device you're using to watch this video, in fact. There are lots of stories about the bizarre questions Apple asked potential hires. One of the most bewildering examples is this oddball pizza delivery question, which was asked of specialist applicants. Is that how Apple sees itself? As selling something that people really don't need, but we're going to sell it to them anyway. If your main job is simply to deliver pizzas from the store to someone's door, all you need are some functioning wheels, hands, and a digital map, right? But since the job of an Apple specialist is to help customers identify ownership opportunities, present products and services, and educate them on relevant ways to buy products, what this question is really asking is, how would you sell scissors to a pizza delivery man? Granted, it doesn't make the question considerably easier to answer, but at least we now understand the question. How would you test an elevator? I mean, push the button. If it comes down and the door's open, you get in. Or you ask a young child to get in the elevator for you.
A child?
Yes, yeah. I'm not qualified for this job, I'm sorry. Microsoft supposedly asked this question to potential software development engineers. It makes sense though. Troubleshooting is part of the job description, and this question is a good way to measure that. And there's an actual correct answer. For example, depending on where you are in the world, elevator load tests follow certain legally mandated specifications and restrictions. But perhaps what gives additional gravity, pun intended, to this inquiry is the fact that the product in question rarely gets periods of rest, is used by many people simultaneously, and can present a very real safety risk if it malfunctions, although this is mercifully rare. If you could get rid of one US state, which would it be and why? One U.S. state. This is dark. I would get rid of Hawaii. I'd give it back to the Hawaiian people because it's a stolen state. That would be my initial instinct. How would you go about choosing, and more importantly, what would your choice say about you? This is the kind of data Forrester Research was likely interested in when it added this to a list of interview questions for research associate candidates. Obviously, removing a state is anything but simple, and merely pondering the question is likely to lead anyone down a rabbit hole of legal loopholes and political biases, which, when discussed in the workplace, often goes badly. Regardless, there's still some merit to asking this, as it's likely to inform the interviewer about how the candidate tackles difficult discussions and how carefully they deliver answers to questions that could be politically charged. On a scale from 1 to 10, rate me as an interviewer. That would be tough in a real situation. Well, how about you tell me if I have the job first, and then I'll tell you how you did. Yeah. Some of the worst jobs in history involve a considerable amount of personal risk. But what if the final question in your job interview sounds like a trap? As part of its interviews with prospective general laborers, interviewers at Kraft Heinz have reportedly asked candidates to give them a rating. Awkward. It's an uncomfortable request by default, exacerbated by the fact that the person you'll be assessing has complete control over whether you'll get hired in the first place. But that just might be the point. Perhaps the intent is to gauge exactly how the person would answer a difficult question, one that might require a delicate dance when under pressure. And again, would you honestly be able to tell your job interviewer straight to their face that they did a terrible job? There's a correct answer to that one. No.